It's a good question. So I was introduced to a quote or a phrase called "a crisis is a terrible thing to waste." And actually that, along with kind of accept and adapt, kind of became a bit of a mantra actually. Right, okay, this is a crisis, and we were kind of going through our own crisis anyway. We were going to be relegated. So the pandemic hit March 2020. We already knew that we were being relegated the following season. And in a weird way, relegation was a good thing, because it kind of prepared. We'd done a lot of the preparation from January through to March when the pandemic hit, preparing to kind of basically, how do we go through a year in the championship? You know, you're going to have reduced crowds, you know, you're going to have less sponsors, you're going to have, so we had already kind of done the business planning and looking at the financial models in preparation for that. So, and we had got really, really close as a team of people. Everything we'd been through brought us so unbelievably tight, and we'd kind of retained key people. So players were incredibly loyal, coaches were incredibly loyal, key members of staff incredibly loyal, and everything we'd been through, I don't know how to put it, but it was this unbelievable kind of powerful loyalty and care for each other and for the club that kind of, we were like, right, okay, it's just another crisis. We're going to make the most of it. And actually, in a weird way, we really looked at, right, okay, how do we diversify our revenue lines? Financially, we had to look at, you know, managing cash flow. We obviously used the furlough schemes. The DCMS and Sport England were amazing with the loan packages, and that process was successful. So there was a lot of help, you know, grant applications we were successful with. So there was a lot of help financially from that perspective. But all of our staff and players agreed to a 25% salary sacrifice, which was massive. And they were all, you know, that's tough for people, really tough. And they were all like unbelievably loyal throughout the whole phase. Everyone really, really pulled together. So I think we actually kind of came through it in a really good kind of state. Obviously it's difficult because the pandemic hit and suddenly all your revenues switched off overnight. So you suddenly, you know, but if I look back and you take time to reflect, there were so many good things that came out of a terrible crisis, a terrible thing that was happening. You know, the club really got behind loads of we responded to the pandemic for the local community, and we had the NHS vaccination centre at the stadium, and we did loads of stuff with the local community, preparing meals here for people, for NHS staff. All our partners got on board, and it was actually quite a kind of galvanising thing for people. So yeah, I think although it was incredibly difficult, I think it taught me that we have unbelievably good people who care like ridiculous amount for the club and the organisation, and incredibly loyal fan base as well. So we launched a multi-year season ticket, which a lot of our fans got behind, given that they didn't even know if there was going to be a season, and a lot of people that raised £4.5 million of cash, because we were selling at a time when the club really, really needed it. So all of our fans, a number of people donated their season ticket instead of requesting a refund, or they rolled credit. And it was just a massive team effort. But I think it really it gave us a chance to really set some really solid foundations for kind of the next 4 years and what we wanted to achieve. And yeah, although it was a huge learning curve, but I think some really good things came out of it. A very steep learning curve is the answer to that. It was, I think what I learned is you had to get a group of people around you that you trust implicitly. And then once you've got that group of people, you kind of empower them and you get on, and as a team you kind of work through everything. And I think there are definitely moments where you have to kind of put on a brave face for everyone else as well. So you can kind of, you know, go and hide in a box in the stadium on your own and really kind of be like, you know, shed a tear or two for what's going on. But then when you kind of walk into the office, you really need to put that brave face on, because, you know, that's what people need to see when it first hit. And obviously if you're on the Zoom calls, you need to show people that it's going to be okay. So I think that's what people wanted to hear. So from that perspective, I think we had, or we still do, have brilliant people. And I don't think any organisation could have got through a pandemic without fantastic people who care unbelievably. And we had that, and we still have that. And yeah, I think you kind of have to trust your gut, trust your judgment. You have to make, be very decisive, and sometimes it's really tough decisions. You know, we sadly had to make some people redundant. You know, really hard decisions, but I think as long as you do it in the right way and still try and look after people as much as you can. But I think, yes, be decisive, really get great people around you and then trust them. Just accept what's going on and adapt quickly. Don't be afraid of change, because everything's changing so fast from one day to the next. I mean, I remember we did like scenario planning for 10 different scenarios, and then none of them would ever happen, and you've done all this work, but actually all that planning and work does come to fruition in the end, because it's just you learn through it. But yeah, I think I learned that you get a sense of responsibility as well for a lot of people's livelihoods, and not just the people you directly employ, but everything this club does for local community, you know, our fans, what it means to them, and they really felt it when they couldn't come to games and things like that. So I think you kind of get this huge sense of responsibility of what Saracens means to everyone, and that really kind of drives you forward. But yeah, I think I'd say I as a kind of CEO, kind of early on in the career, it's a fantastic learning curve, because you are learning all the time. On your feet, you have to front up, you have to speak to people. I think it was good to kind of almost, there's no such thing as over communicating. Like, people wanted to know what was going on. And I think we're still working on it, but our internal communication became so much stronger during the pandemic, because it had to be, because we weren't seeing each other the whole time. But yeah, so I'd say it was, I always try to look at like the good things that come out of a bad situation. Yeah, so we had, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I almost feel we had such amazing people, and everyone stayed at the club. Everyone was so loyal, and the whole, you know, everything we went through together made us unbelievably strong as a unit. And I'd say like our culture was tested, and we talk a lot about culture and what that means about being a family, and it was tested, but I would say, you know, we're closer than ever. And I think, you know, obviously we had that first away game at Cornish Pirates, which we lost, and everyone was a bit like, oh, okay, this is going to be quite difficult. But the coaches were brilliant. They never, well, certainly not to me, maybe behind closed doors, but they never appeared kind of flapped by it or, you know, rocked by anything. They were very kind of steady. They knew exactly what they'd do. They planned it. When our England players actually came back from the Six Nations, because if you remember, the championship didn't actually get underway till March, because there was a delayed start because of everything that was going on. So when it did get underway, we had about 4 games without our internationals, but a lot of our internationals then, when they came back, they weren't due in the planning to play a lot of the championship games, but when they came back, they were all like, we want to play, we want to play, we want to play for the club, we want to make sure we get back to the Premiership. And they were all brilliant, and they came back in. And I have to say, when we did that first, so the playoffs were 2 against Ealing. There were 2 rounds of playoffs. The first playoff was away, and then the second one was at home at StoneX. And it was the best aggregate score over the 2 fixtures. And I remember that feeling of that first away fixture where the team played unbelievably well. I can't remember the exact score, but they won by 50 odd points. And the sheer feeling of relief was and joy and everything else was amazing. And again, it's a kind of a really memorable day for everyone, like a really incredible experience that we all went through together. And then the second playoff was at StoneX, and when we'd won, and there's this photo on the pitch of the team lifting the trophy, and like all their kids like all around them, all in the team photo, and like kids running haywire everywhere. And then we had a massive kind of barbecue here with all the staff and everything. Again, it was just a really, really special day that I think we'll all remember because of the journey we'd been on. So, a lot. So last weekend we had the showdown at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which was due to happen 5 days after lockdown happened. So this was kind of like, 2 years in the waiting. So it was meant to be March 26th, 2020. And it was March 26th, 2022 when we finally played the game. So to have kind of 40,000 plus people at Tottenham Hotspur on Saturday was just, and it's a stunning stadium. It's a beautiful stadium. And it was fantastic for our team who'd worked so hard for that first fixture that never happened, to finally, for it to happen. And the amount of work that goes into it is astronomical. And it's a brilliant showpiece for the club, because I know like we love StoneX Stadium, that's our home. But taking, the odd game to Tottenham Hotspur is a fantastic opportunity, because we have to grow our audience, we have to reach a new fan base. We have a plan of how we get to financial sustainability. And selling out Tottenham Hotspurs is hugely valuable to the club in terms of growing our audience, growing our database, attracting new people from Tottenham Hotspur game. It's their first ever rugby game to then come to StoneX Stadium. And also the growth of the brand. I always feel the bigger the brand, the bigger the social impact we can have. And as we move towards more financial sustainability in a break-even position, we can then invest more into our foundation, into the Saracens High School, into all the kind of social impact stuff that we want to do. So we want to put people first, and we want to enrich people's lives. That's what our vision is as a club. It's got nothing to do with trophies. But to do that, we have to have a really solid financial base. We have to, if we continue to grow our brand, we can have a bigger social impact. So I think the showdown was very important for us in terms of proving to ourselves that we could do it. And it was just a fantastic day for the club, so that was exciting. And then we've done some work with Ernst & Young on a kind of social impact report. So they've helped measure the social impact that the whole Saracens group as an organisation has. We're actually launching that an event at the stadium tomorrow. And that's been really important to us because, it's so fundamental to our being that we want to enrich people's lives and put people first. And actually quantifying what we've done over the last, they've just looked at 18-19, but that's obviously taken 20 years in the making to have that impact. But some of the things coming out of that report, from a social impact perspective, for every £1 our foundation invests delivers a £6.60 return, and the average in sport is £3.28. So we're doubling that average. Our foundation, it's much higher than this because this was pre-pandemic levels, but delivers 16,600 plus hours in the community through all of our, I think we've got more than 25 plus different programs. So, you know, I think, you know, the first ever sports team in the world to open a mainstream secondary school with the Saracens High School. You know, kind of from an economic perspective, the impact we have on the borough, and this is just a snapshot, but from visits to the stadium on match days, delivers 5.4 million return to the local community, just from people coming into the borough for Saracens match days. So really understanding that from like all the job creation we do, so we support 700 jobs, so that's what we support full-time jobs, and then we support kind of the whole economics of running the club in the borough, what that then returns in terms of job support. And then from an environmental perspective as well, how at the time of opening, Stonex Stadium was the most energy efficient and sustainable stadium in this country. And we want to, you know, looking at our kind of carbon net zero credentials and how long it would take us to be carbon net zero. But we've really kind of learnt a lot over the last 6 to 12 months about, I guess, 3 pillars, but under kind of social, economic and environmental, about what we want to return over the next, you know, short to medium term, 5 to 10 years. Like, what are we going to do to impact more lives for the better in the borough of Barnet and beyond? You know, and we've, you know, that's what we're about. That's what really means a lot to us. So we kind of, that's been a huge, important piece of work with EY to make sure, okay, right, we were there in 1819, you know, that's a benchmark, and we've done a lot of work, but this is where we want to take it to. And then likewise, women's sports been a huge, massively exciting opportunity. So we've got our women's rugby team and the Saracens Mavericks, the Super League netball franchise. And kind of being at the forefront of women's sport has been really fun, exciting, kind of understanding what professionalisation looks like, how you take the women's game forward. It's been kind of, for our sponsors, they really get it. Like, our sponsors and partners really now understand why we want to be at the forefront of women's sport, what we're trying to do, where we're trying to take it, and creating the best possible environment and ecosystem around our kind of female athletes so that they can be the best possible players, and what that looks like and how it integrates into the whole group. So yeah, just a little bit of work.